Today I'm going to show you how I do it. A couple of tips for you. One, you want a high quality espresso machine if you want high quality espresso. How's that for logical? This is an Electra, which is a pretty, decent machine. It's a hand-built Italian. This is the original espresso machine model. As you can tell, it's kind of cool and antiquated looking. So a good espresso machine is very important. To make a good espresso, the machine needs to be properly cleaned and it needs to be well warmed up. If you make an espresso first thing in the morning before the machine's well heated, you'll find that it's hard to get a good shot out of it. The other thing is the machines need to be kept clean. Particularly, this is called the group. Inside the group, the filter comes out, which is very, very hot. Fortunately, I got calloused fingers from lifting weights. Inside, you need to keep that clean every week or so. Give it a wash out. You get all sorts of buildup in there. And remember, coffee is a strong fungal feeder. So whenever you have a dirty espresso machine, you have a fungal infection in your cup. Yeah, that's something to be concerned about. So when you walk into an espresso shop or somewhere making coffee for you, if the machines are dirty, hope you don't have a fungal infection. And remember, if you do have a fungal infection, coffee at all is a problem. Okay? So if you are making espresso when you're in a hurry, and the machine's hot, which you can tell by the pressure gauge, it's in the green zone there, which tells you it's ready to make a beautiful espresso. If you need to ensure a better espresso, take your group, take some boiling water, and just pour some boiling water into the group and let it heat up. You can even pour it all over it. Remember, it's going to be very, very hot, so don't touch it. So that's a little high speed in the morning trick for you. Okay, next, the grinder is probably almost as important as the machine. Your best grinders are what are called low-speed grinders. So this is a low-speed grinder. If the grinder goes too fast, or if it uses blades, essentially it damages the bean and does not make nearly as good a quality of an espresso. If you compared the two side by side, it would be obvious. But if you're not used to making those comparisons, you probably wouldn't notice the difference consciously. A good slow-speed grinder does not obliterate the structure of the coffee or the cell of the bean, and when you taste it, it's got a much more body to it, almost like cream. But a cheap grinder tears the bean up, and the espresso tastes, shall we say, less bodied. It just tastes more like liquid that tastes like coffee. There's words can't describe it, but you can do the experiment yourself. Cheap coffee grinder, most people have one. Try to make an espresso with it. Good coffee grinder, if you can get one, makes a big difference. Okay, a couple more tips for you here. One, I've got my cup ready here, and it's got hot water in it, because in a minute we're going to put the magic raw butter in there, and I'll explain that to you. Next, the grind is critical. You'll notice outside it's cloudy right now. There's a fair bit of moisture in the atmosphere. When that happens, you usually have to increase the size of the grind. You'll know because if the grind's right, you'll get a nice crema, and the rate of flow through the machine will be ideal, which I'll explain in a minute. So grinding is a constant experiment. Every day you pretty much have to check if you want to perform perfect espresso shots. Okay? So I've got my grind set to about 3 for today. So what I'm going to do is get my espresso going in here. This is a very nice dark roast Cafe Ibis. Here's another good one, Volcanic Red, or Jim's Organic Coffee. They have a variety of them. There's many great ones, but as many of you are probably aware and should remember, coffee is a very heavily sprayed crop. It's grown mostly in third world countries where they have little to no pesticide regulations. So when you're drinking coffee that's coming out under high pressure, you're going to get all those toxins out of there. So coffee should be organic if you want to stay healthy. When you put the coffee in the basket, each machine has a sprinkler head under there, and it has to sit down into the basket a certain amount. Most baskets have a little line, a ridge in the basket to tell you where to pack the coffee to. If you put less coffee in that, it'll make a weaker shot. If you put more, it won't fit underneath there, and it can create enough pressure to unwind it and explode the coffee machine, and you can have coffee all over your house, shattered cups, and all sorts of very exciting things. How hard you pack the coffee is going to also influence the rate of flow as the water comes through. If you pack it too hard and it runs too slow, it often tastes very good, but you don't get a crema. And the coffee runs so slow that by the time you get to it, it's cold. I can tell intuitively that's a little too much coffee, so I'm going to scrape just a little bit out there to make more room in the basket. Then you always want to repack it and give it a little seal so it's got a nice smooth surface. If you don't repack it after you adjust the level, it often only runs out of one side of the basket because it'll go through the porous side as opposed to the compressed side. So give it an even compressed seal. Then we're going to put that bad boy up there. Make sure she's tight so it doesn't blow off. Now we're going to get rid of the water out of the cup. I use raw organic butter in my espresso. The fat in the butter gives us both a nutrition source, and how much butter you put in there, by the way, is up to your taste. That's about what I like. So the fat in the butter is very, very helpful. Remember, in order to digest protein, you need fat in the mix, and there's many amino acids in coffee. So to convert those into a, shall we say, a more available food source, we add a good source of fat. The fat also ties up the caffeine, so it creates more like a drip effect or a time-release vitamin effect, as opposed to just getting whammo blasted, which takes you way up and then drops you way down and causes all sorts of neat things like blood sugar imbalances, excess cortisol release, etc. So now I got my butter in there. I place it under. Now if your pack is right and your grind is right, it should take between 19 and 24 seconds for the water to run through until the shot's complete. Drip coffee can take minutes to drip through. So the key feature here is the shorter exposure time to water decreases the amount of caffeine that can be absorbed. But the higher pressure extracts much more of the amino acids and other chemical factors that are also stimulatory and potentially nutritious in the bean. Therefore, one of your first steps toward reducing caffeine content is to switch from drip coffee to espresso. If you want a cup of coffee as typically used, take your shot of espresso, pour it in a cup. A shot of espresso is 1 ounce. You can then add hot water to flavor, and you will still have a beautiful, typical cup of coffee, but it'll have far less exposure time. It'll be rich in taste and flavor, but lower in caffeine. The average shot of espresso is between 40 and 70 milligrams of caffeine, but the average cup of Starbucks coffee, black coffee, is 300 to 350 milligrams of caffeine. So it's a very significant dose. Many people notice that they get more of a buzz from espresso thinking that it's more caffeine. It's actually the amino acids and the other factors, which you can read about in Illy's book on coffee making. So now that I've got it set here, we got it packed, we got it ready, heats up, we'll hold the handle down. It should start dripping through in less than a minute if the pack is good. So I'm going to give it a few seconds here. And there it goes in about 15 seconds or so. Now I'm going to let the handle go. And because this is a home machine, not a commercial machine, I'm going to let it go about a half shot or quarter shot, re-pull, and that'll give me an ideal shot. So you can see it coming through, and it's coming in a beautiful pace right there. And you can see the crema forming really nicely. So if you get a coffee without crema, it's usually an indicator that you've made mistakes along the way. As it's coming out, you want to watch the crema. The crema will start to turn white when the coffee is at the point where it's going to become acidic and start losing its flavor. So it's still going nice. I've got it set right, so it's probably not going to turn white, and it's not going to do that. But just so you know, when that crema starts to turn whitish, it's time to pull the espresso out and taste it. Now, I got a lot of butter in there, so I'm going to give it a little gentle stir just to mix it all in. So I like to have a smell. Woo-wee! That's what I call sex in a cup, baby. If you're a lonely bachelor and you know how to make espresso, you get liquid sex, but be careful, it can be addictive. Let's taste. Would you like to join me in body, mind, and spirit, my beautiful coffee spirits? Oh, thank you. Oh, that's so damn good. It ought to be illegal how good that is. That's why this stuff's so damn hard to get off of. Once you get the coffee bug, man, you can get addicted. It's like a love affair. But it's a great love affair because coffee never expects anything from you, and it loves you every time, and that is what we call good love. So now, it's a bit late in the day for me to be drinking coffee. I typically only drink a little bit myself because I've been through many rounds of coffee addiction and getting off, and it doesn't excite me anymore. I do love the flavor of coffee. I would say 4 days of the week. I make one for myself just because I love the art of it and the taste of it. I'll have a couple of sips of it. I'll wait till Vidya gets here. I'll leave it in a cup of hot water to keep it hot. She'll have a little sip. And then we celebrate our discipline by pouring the rest down the drain and sharing it with all the creatures in the sink, of which there's many. So you can use other sources of fat. You can use coconut oil, any nut oil, some seeds oil. One of my favorites is roasted pumpkin seed oil in coffee. Mind-blowing combination. Be very careful though, you can develop intolerances to any of these oils. Most oils are not purified to the point that they have no protein in them. The immune system is sensitive to proteins. I gave myself an intolerance to coconut oil by using it regularly. So rotate your oils if you're at all suffering from any kind of leaky gut syndrome, fungal infection, parasite infection, or digestive problems, or you'll become intolerant. One of the ways you'll know you're getting intolerant is after you drink your coffee, within a few minutes to an hour, you'll start getting a headache and feeling tired and lethargic instead of picked up and excited about your drink. Now, if you're drinking coffee at restaurants or on the road and you cannot get organic espresso, you can get a variety of different types of medicinal clays. This is Great Plains bentonite detox clay. I like to use pascalite. So if you look up pascalite, P-A-S-C-E-L-I-T-E clay, you can find them on the web. Take a little bit of clay. What you would do, for example, well, this one's sealed, but you'd put a teaspoon of clay in, drop it in the bottom of your coffee cup or espresso cup. It doesn't matter if the coffee's already in there or not. Drop it in, give it a stir, wait a couple of minutes. The clay is heavy, so it'll settle to the bottom, but clay is an adsorbent and an absorbent, which means it attracts things electrically, and it also attracts things by absorbing them like a sponge. So it'll attract a lot of the toxins in the coffee, such as pesticide sprays and anything else in there, and you can literally taste and feel the difference. Now, before you drink it, make sure you don't stir it, or you'll have all that clay and you'll just be drinking all the toxins. Let it settle to the bottom, then drink it. You can do a before and after test, or you can buy 2 coffees, put clay in one and not the other. you'll find if you're drinking commercial coffee, you often get a kind of a weird background, almost dry buzz. You can get unusual symptoms such as auditory hallucinations, sounds buzzing in your ears, flashing lights, visual disturbances, nervous jitters, energy highs and lows, mental fog. Those are classic symptoms of drinking commercial coffee that you don't get with organic coffee. And you'll notice when you use the clay, probably 90%, if not all of those symptoms are obliterated because the garbage that stimulates the body in a negative way is often absorbed into the clay. It's one of my little Paul Chek road tricks. I developed this technique right here because I was studying time-release vitamins and various other things and thought, well, hell, why not just create a time-release vitamin per se out of espresso? So I started experimenting with different types of fats and oils probably about 12 or 14 years ago. And as I've been sharing that with elite athletes and famous people like Laird Hamilton and others, it's spread and now it's becoming crazy on the internet. I think it's kind of funny. Okay? So those are some of the key features of making a good espresso. Keep the machine clean, have a good grinder, adjust the grind regularly. The espresso should take 19 to 24 seconds to run through the basket if you got the pressure right, the grind right, and everything just right like I've shared. Again, espresso has less caffeine, relatively speaking, than drip coffee because of the speed it comes through the basket, but it gives you more of a relative buzz due to the amino acids and other chemical factors which are described in Illy's book on coffee. So those are my basic coffee making tips. I hope you've enjoyed seeing how I do it, and I hope you enjoy doing it. Remember, rotate your fat sources. I like butter a lot better than ghee because the butter has enough protein that it mixes into the coffee. A lot of the oils will float up on top, which isn't quite as pleasant of an experience, but it still goes a long way to turning coffee, which is really a drug, into something more like a food source with some beneficial stimulating qualities to it. My final reminder is, remember, you're far better off drinking an espresso and adding water to it to give it that coffee experience than to use drip coffee, because you'll have lower caffeine and generally a cleaner experience, making it easier to get off the coffee. So in my next video clip in Paul Chek's Coffee Tips, I will give you lots of tips for getting off of coffee, which I'm also an expert at. So I'll talk to you soon. Hope you enjoyed our little coffee lesson from my kitchen in heaven. Aho, Great Spirit. Enjoy your espresso wisely.